separating off seasons this week and next Monday with the NL West. But we're going to go AL East on Monday, AL Central Tuesday, AL West Wednesday, NL East Thursday, NL Central Friday, NL West the following Monday. We start with the American League East. Jack Aram, just baseball show on Monday, February 6th. You're getting over a bit of a bug, and what better way to get over that bug than to talk about Adam Frazier and Masataka Yoshida, right?
I don't even put those two in the same conversation because I'm gonna get to the Adam Frazier thing. Trust me, I've been laying in my bed for the last couple of days thinking about like what we're gonna talk about for this specifically today. That was the one where I was like, man, how excited I am to talk about Adam Frazier with the Baltimore Orioles. But I'll save it for then because there's so much I have to say about that signing. But I'm excited. It's time to grade these off seasons. It's time to kind of wrap a bow on the offseason. I know that there's still some like moving parts, like why the hell has Jurickson Profar not been signed yet? I have no idea. Right. But, I know there's some final moves that have to be made, but for the most part, I think we can pretty definitively, grade these off seasons. That kind of puts the off season in the rear view. And then we shift forward to projections, predictions, and all that good stuff. So I'm excited to do this, wrap a bow on 2022 and get really excited for going into 2023.
We're like here, dude. We're at baseball season. Pitchers and catchers report end of next week. I saw Jameson Tyone tweeted plane emoji to Arizona. Like this guy's gonna be there. Graham Ashcraft just left for spring training yesterday. I saw his wife put something out. So, I mean, these guys are going. Baseball season's here. I loved seeing the Fan Fest stuff. I think that's great. Yeah. A lot of teams, it's like, you do the same old song and dance, and the Marlins, I'm sure, like I went to Sox Fest, I went to the Cubs convention or whatever they call it, Cubs Fest, and it's just spewing the positive PR. And for a 500 team, it's ho hum, whatever. But the crowd size at Petco for Padres Fan Fest was insane. Yeah. How about Adley Rutschman, Grayson Rodriguez, and DL Hall chugging beers with fans in Baltimore? Yeah. Like there's something good about teams that have good vibes going into the year. The vibes are starting right before spring training. And that's honestly given me that kick in the ass that I needed where it's like, holy shit, dude, baseball's here.
No, it's awesome. That's kind of been that turning of the page. And I think you really get it as a general sports fan right after the Super Bowl. But the one thing I'll say about the crowd at Petco Park, great weather helps, of course. Yeah. But first and foremost, the crowd that you get there for the Padres is a direct result of investing in your team. And I'm not saying everybody has to add the way that the Padres had. But I think even if the Padres didn't make, the Soto move, I think people are still excited enough about this team to be showing out big time because of the other moves that they've made. Like this is a team that has invested in not only winning, but earning the trust of fans. And I think we're seeing the result here. It's kind of interesting how that works, right? Put out a good product and have a lot more people, go to buy the opportunity to go consume that product. It's really simple, but for whatever reason, not simple enough for some other organizations. But no, I'm excited for the February to get going into pitchers and catchers, spring training, and then before we know it, we're ready to go. And the World Baseball Classic, again, perfect kind of bridge to that point.
Yeah, 100%. And what I will say is on the baseball field, you may look at $280 million for Xander Bogaerts and say, wow, that's an overpay compared to market value. I think those fan fest type things where you see that massive outpouring of support and you see Xander Bogaerts in that Padres jersey smiling with Juan Soto, apparently pissed that Juan Soto snatched the apartment in San Diego that Bogaerts wanted, and Machado and Tatis together, like everybody smiling, that foursome, that creates this buzz. And you think about, the money that was spent at Petco Park on a non-game day, you're making a lot of that money back already. Like $280 for the Padres because they have commit to the product. It's not going to hurt at any point.
Yep. And that's why I said, like, even if they didn't get Soto, adding Xander to this equation there, I think is enough to get fans really excited and really bought in. So I'm excited. That's the team to watch for me this year. And I think, obviously the community, the larger San Diego community feels the same way.
I'm big on the Tigers this year, but we'll talk about the AL East. And we're going to start with a team that didn't commit to the product as much as I think you, me, Peter, everybody else was almost convinced that they were going to commit to the product, and that's the Baltimore Orioles. Here's what they did this offseason. They signed Adam Frazier to a 1-year, $8 million deal. They signed Kyle Gibson to a 1-year, $10 million deal. Michael Givens to 1-year, $5 million with a mutual option in 2024. They acquired James McCann in a salary dump for the Mets, even though the Mets are taking on a lot of it. They acquired Cole Irvin and Kyle Verbitsky for Daryl Hernaiz. And then they added Darwinzon Hernandez, Nomar Mazara, Franchi Cordero, Daz Cameron, Lewin Diaz, who finally cleared waivers, Ryan O'Hearn, and Josh Lester on minor league deals. We were promised a buy into this team. We didn't get it. They added some pieces. My first grade is a D. I give Baltimore a D because while they added 2 veteran arms when you needed starting pitching help. I guess you kind of got it. They didn't help themselves in any way. So they checked boxes, but it wasn't a good pen checking those boxes.
No, yeah. I was, kind of between a D and a D minus. I was trying to figure out exactly, where I stand on it. And it's weird because almost any addition that a team makes, I'm not going to dock any points here, but I almost wanted to slide it to a D minus because of the addition of Adam Frazier. I couldn't think of a fit that makes less sense than Adam Frazier. And I'll get to the pitching in a second, but okay. You sign a guy here that can play second base, doesn't really play much else around the infield, can play corner outfield, like kind of that utility-ish role for them. But he's a bat to ball guy that's now going into a park that's very hard to hit it out of. And on top of that, you are so set at all of the different positions. Like you have 4 different prospects that could come up and make, I think, bigger of an impact than Adam Frazier and his 81 WRC plus last season. He had that really nice half a season. And I think now all of a sudden we're like waiting for him to get back to that. He wasn't that before. He hasn't been that since. And I don't know why Frazier continues to get these opportunities. The Orioles aren't competing for a World Series this year. This is a team that we wanted to see build off of what was a really fun year where they, expedited the timeline a little bit. Adam Frazier is not putting you over the top. And if he's taking at bats away from a Connor Norby, a Jordan Westberg, even some of the other guys in the outfield, I'd rather see Terrin Vavra get some at-bats than Adam Frazier. I think Vavra could be just as good. So I don't really understand this one. I'd even rather watch Mateo, and you shuffle around the infield. So there's so many better options. He's going to get some starts in the outfield. He's going to kind of move all over. I'm okay with him as a bench option, but he specifically said, like, I'm looking forward to playing every day. Obviously, they're paying him to play every day too, and they probably told him that. I hate it from that perspective. So that almost makes me want to make it a D minus because, yes, they addressed the pitching in the form of adding 2 arms who are capable, which is more than what they've been able to say the last couple of years. Like these guys, can at least get through a season without having a balloon ERA. They'll be in the
Kyle Gibson
mid-fours,
had a 5, dude.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying generously, though, that this is a guy that you're not going to DFA probably. Like, that's the difference, I guess. Like, he's an arm in your rotation that you are not DFAing. Like, he's not going to be Patrick Corbin bad. And then that's the fact that that's where we're drawing the line here is brutal. Like, why is Michael Wacha not here? I don't even like him that much, but that'd be way better than Cole Irvin and Kyle Gibson. So I think Gibson's going to be better this year. I really do. So I'm not going to really knock them for that one. Cole Irvin on top of that was like, do one or the other and then do something actually good. So I don't love it. The Adam Frazier signing almost makes me want to make it a D minus, but I like the Michael Givens pickup. I think that's a sneaky bullpen option. I'm going to go D final.
D final. Okay. So
and I won't be that long on any other signing. I just hate the Adam Frazier signing more than anything with how much I love the Orioles system, their upper level prospects, and the fact that, that might take away ABs from these guys when they're still building towards the long-term future pisses me off.
No, they decided to appease Adam Frazier and financially compensate him above probably what he's worth relative to market value. And he is going to get at-bats, take away at-bats from Mateo, from Joey Ortiz, from Jordan Westberg, from Connor Norby. That's insane.
Even Terrin Vavra, man. I'm sticking with
Terrin Vavra.
Vavra had a 97 WRC plus last year in 40 games at the big league level and raked in AAA.
So I get the vet thing. Like, I absolutely get the vet thing. Don't get me wrong. But why $9 million for a guy that can't do anything of impact?
Imagine this. You don't sign Adam Frazier. You don't sign Kyle Gibson. You put that money together and then you go sign a better pitcher. Is that crazy? Because that's $20 million right there.
It's not crazy. It's $19 million for the 2023 season. My other thing is, like, instead of Frazier, why didn't you look at like a Josh Harrison or something, or an Elvis Andrus if you did want to do that? Because it's so much lower pay. Like, it's a lower price tag.
Yeah. How about a Gene Segura? Like, Gene Segura is roughly the same price. It's cheaper.
Gene's what, 2 for 13?
He was 2 for 17, I think.
2 for
17. I guess you had to go the multi-year deal. AAV, though, it's pretty much the same, cheaper.
I mean, dude, it's insane. And I guess they like his ability to play the corners, but then you're taking at bats away from Kowser or Stowers or whatever the hell. I mean, it was.
You like a corner outfielder who hits 5 home runs? I don't get it. I really don't get it.
I mean, that guy, like, when I say 320, 320, 320, like Adam Frazier's.
That's him.
Yeah. Frazier's 320, 320, 320.
Although recently he's more 270, 280. Like, that's what you get from him. So
damn, he hit a double.
D for me, like, no doubt. Okay. But at the end of the day, like, this team's still going to be a little better. And it's just because they're naturally getting a little better. And that's the part that's kind of frustrating. Yeah. So we'll see what they do, but definitely a very dormant offseason, all things considered. I didn't mind the James McCann addition in a vacuum, though. A veteran catcher who, whoever the backup is going to play as little as any backup in Major League Baseball. Correct. So you might as well have it be somebody that's a vet catcher that you really just want him for the defense and handling the staff and whatever. And you basically got him for free. And, he's still worthwhile being a backup catcher. It's just the contract made him basically the most easily attainable piece in Major League Baseball, and the Mets paid for him, to go to the Orioles. So I like that move for them, but again, that's not a needle mover.
Yeah, no, not at all. All right, let's jump to Boston here, and this is going to be a conversation about the grade. We're getting, I feel like the two negative ones out of the way first. The Boston Red Sox, the elephant in the room is Xander Bogaerts is not on that team anymore. 11 for 280 with the San Diego Padres. Michael Wacha is not on that team anymore. Nathan Eovaldi is not on that team anymore. But here's what they did. They extended Rafi Devers, 10 years, $313.5 million. They got the extension done with one of them. They signed Masataka Yoshida to 5 years, $90 million. They signed Kenley Jansen to 2 for 32, Chris Martin to 2 for 13.5. They signed Justin Turner, 2 for 21.7. Corey Kluber, 1 for 10. Adam Duvall, 1 for 7. Joely Rodriguez, who's going to get some bullpen innings for them, 1 for $2 million. They acquire Big Dick Blyer, Richard Blyer, for Matt Barnes and cash. They acquire Adalberto Mondesi for left-hander Josh Taylor. And then they agree to minor league free agent deals with Jorge Alfaro, Nico Goodrum, Raimel Tapia, Greg Allen, Narciso Crook. Whew, that's a lot. Quantity over quality was the name of the game for the Boston Red Sox. So instead of committing, $30 million to Xander Bogaerts annually, they commit $30 million to 10 guys, which is just crazy. I'm not a big fan of it at all, but what I will say is they tried their hardest to compensate, knowing that they will be priced out. The fucking Boston Red Sox are getting priced out of their own guy. That should never happen in a million years. But when Chaim Bloom had that moment in the airport, right, where his jaw was on the floor and he's like, we're not getting Xander back. I think they did not a good job. They did a job of going to grab 10 guys to try and replace the war of one guy. I'm going to give them a C- because it's not like they did nothing and they got objectively worse. I think they'll probably, finish the year with pretty similar record to what they did last year. And if they didn't extend Devers and Devers was sitting here still in arbitration, this would be a fat F, a massive F. But they lock up their superstar and they sign a bunch of guys that might be fine for them. C-.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the analogy for it here. But, first I want to talk about the grade because we were talking about this before we recorded. And, I think losing a player, you can't just be like A to B where it's like, oh, you lost Xander Bogaerts, but you added this. So we're going to grade it this way. I think you got to look at, what is their replacement? What do they have on their roster? And then, how much of a deficit is that for them? So for the Red Sox, losing Xander Bogaerts is a huge blow. There's no way around that, especially with the injury to Story, which is something that they were kind of aware of. So especially with that considered, like that is a huge subtraction for them. That's not like some of the other teams that, maybe have a surplus at a position. And like, let's say for the Twins, Luis Arias was a free agent and he walked, or Pablo Lopez was a free agent and he walked. Like, we're not probably knocking those teams too much for losing that because they have direct plugins that can, really fill that void. That's not the case with Xander. That said, I think they've did an okay job, like you said, in the other areas. Like, I think Duvall is an upside, a potential upside pickup there for that. That's a guy that could hit pretty well.
He could hit 25 homers.
Yeah, and he can play. I think he'll hit even better there, right? And he can play all three outfield spots. Justin Turner was phenomenal in the second half last year. That guy could still hit. Like, don't get it twisted. And I think that's a bat that really helps them. I like Yoshida a lot. Like, those are all good additions. The problem is, it feels like they're just trying to almost give it like the college try.
Yes.
Like there's no way that they believe that this is going to work. And I think the rotation is the biggest issue, right? When you let an Eovaldi go, who would have clearly been the number 2 in this rotation, even a Waka, who is probably due to regress. I'm okay with them letting him walk because he's seeking a multi-year deal. There's a reason why he hasn't been signed, but letting both of them walk, I think was pretty big. The offsetting doesn't quite make up for it. If they offset equally, it would be a C, right? Like, is that kind of how we're thinking? If they offset exactly what they lost, it'd be a wash. It's a C. Yes. I don't think they quite did that, but they did gain enough back, especially in the area of the bullpen. I don't love Kenley as a closer, but Kenley's still a hell of a lot better than Matt Barnes and whatever else they had going on. They needed a lefty. Bleyer's going to be that lefty guy out of the pen who gets lefties out really well. Does not get righties, but the Marlins needed a leverage guy. That was a good trade. You guys talked about that. And then, they go again at Chris Martin, who, look, I don't like how much they paid him, but he's good. He's a good reliever. So that upgrades them significantly there. So overall, I think they gained enough back to salvage the offseason, but not enough to say that they're better than they were last year. That I'm right with you again. We're on the same page. It's a C- for me.
Lineup: Yoshida, Kike Hernandez, Devers, Justin Turner, Alex Verdugo, Adam Duvall, Tristan Casas, Adalberto Mondesi, Reese McGuire. That's a bad lineup. The bench,
Mondesi's probably not going to be ready. That reports are that Mondesi might not be ready. So make that Christian Arroyo, buddy.
Make it Christian Arroyo. As of right now, Fangraphs has the projected bench. I'm going to say Arroyo twice: Alfaro, Dahlbeck, Arroyo, Refsnyder. That's a bad bench.
Think about this. I was just think about the defense up the middle. I know Kike is supposed to be he hasn't really played shortstop in a while. And then you've got an okay Christian Arroyo at second. You've got Duvall in center, who, like, I like the Duvall pickup. I don't like him playing center field every day, which is what he's going to have to do when you have Kike at short. The whole thing about Duvall before he got hurt was we were talking about how the Michael Harris promotion was so great because it got Duvall into a corner/DH role. He's still a great defender in a corner, so it was mostly left field. And guess what happened when he got out of center field? His legs were back under him again, and he started hitting really well before he got hurt. I wonder how he's going to be able to now, after a season-ending injury, how his legs are going to stay under him in everyday reps in center field. I imagine they're going to try to, manage that workload a little bit. But who are you putting out there? Rob Refsnyder, Jaron Duran? Like, that's the other part of it that I don't get. Why are they not trading for Michael A. Taylor when they're calling about Mondesi? Like, why is Michael A. Taylor not a thought here? Somebody that you can also, mix into the equation there. I think they're leaving themselves very exposed. And God forbid if Kike Hernandez gets hurt, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're calling up Emmanuel Valdez? Like, they are one injury away, too. I think that's a thing that people don't realize also, from being in a really, really tough spot. Like, if one of these guys gets hurt, you're really, really out of the comfort zone, especially up the middle. So it's going to be interesting. But I do think that they made some other solid moves, and I don't mind the Mondesi addition at all. I think that was a pretty nice pickup, given that they gave up nothing.
And there's plenty. You got a guy on a thin team. You mentioned, like, no farm. They don't have many backup plans. You got the most fragile athlete in sports over the last 2-3 years in Mondesi.
No, totally. Which is why the roster spot on the bench shouldn't be occupied by Bobby Dalbec when you have Tristan Casas and Justin Turner, right? Like, there's also, like, roster inefficiencies here that don't make sense to me, and some 40-man decisions that I think were kind of head scratchers. Like Thad Ward, I think Thad Ward's gonna have a better year than Nick Pivetta. Like I think F-WAR wise, I think Thad Ward has a better F-WAR. So there was some head scratchers there, but again, I don't think it was a total disaster. And I do think, given how bad shit hit the fan when Xander left, and we're like, oh man, this whole thing could fall apart. I do think that Chaim Bloom picked himself up, and they, didn't panic, and they salvaged this thing enough to put a team together that won't suck and will be at least in the conversation of things up until the end of the summer. And then I think they'll run out of gas pitching wise.
Their transaction page kind of looks like they panicked, if we're being honest.
Well, I think it was almost like a well-controlled panic. Like they had to figure out what they're going to do. And I don't hate any of the moves. If you don't hate any of the moves, then it wasn't a bad panic.
Right.
Like I don't hate any of the moves in a vacuum. Right. So, I do agree. It was kind of like a flurry of, all right, we got to piece this shit together. But I thought they did it with some decent decision-making, and I don't hate the moves that they made overall. It just obviously isn't enough.
When looking at them in a vacuum, when looking at them individually, but as a cohesive unit, they may not click. And we're talking about Kike Hernandez and Adam Duvall. You've got a 32-year-old at short, and you've got a 34-year-old in center. Like that,
both off of injury-laden seasons.
There we go. So we said lineup bad, depth really bad. This starting rotation of Sale, who's been hurt for the last 2 years.
I think he's going to be good.
Kluber, Pivetta, Paxton, Whitlock. That's a pretty bad rotation.
All injured guys, too, besides Pivetta, who is I think could be the least talented arm of that group. So, yeah, it's an iffy rotation, too. It's crazy. Definitely bad. But the bullpen, heck of a lot better.
Heck of a lot better. All right, so I gave it a C-. What do you give it?
I'm with you, C-. We're on the same page so far.
Damn, no good.
I think this is where it changes, though.
This might be where it changes. The New York Yankees is next. Here's what they did. They re-signed Aaron Judge after he tested free agency to 9 years, $360 million. They signed Carlos Rodon to 6 years, $162 million. They let Anthony Rizzo test free agency, 2 years, $40 million. They signed Tommy Kahnle to a 2-year, $11.5 million deal. You bring Kahnle back, and they signed some outfield depth. Rafael Ortega, Willie Calhoun, Michael Hermosillo, and Billy McKinney to minor league deals. This is almost an identical team, and I want you to go first.
Yeah, that's the tough part, right? So we're talking about the addition side of things, the subtraction side of things, right? You let a player walk. How do we grade that? How about just doing the bare minimum of extending your best player? Like, how much are we rewarding that, right? Of course, bravo. You retain Aaron Judge. Well, it's pretty easy to do when you got $360 million, right? So, and he always wanted to be there, and you have that the hometown effect on him as the organization that, brought him up and developed him. And there's a lot of credit to that, but that doesn't go into the offseason grades here. So my biggest issue is this. Like you said, it's the same. And that lineup, bro, like that infield, they're literally running it back, but more expensive. Like that's the lineup wise. It's let's do it again, but with a higher price tag. That part I don't like, but it's hard to give them anything below a passing grade and better. And it's going to be better than a passing grade when you add Carlos Rodon, right? Like when you add a guy that is capable of being a top 5 pitcher in this game when he is healthy, and he's just had the healthiest season of his career. Like, yeah, they paid a lot, and they're going to feel it maybe on the back end, but we're not in the back end yet. Right now we're talking about the off season. So that part of it really makes it solid. But other than that, I mean, they didn't really make, many other major moves. So it really is how much we just talked about the Red Sox quantity over quality. How much do you put into the quality over quantity here when they could have probably used a little bit more quantity in the Bronx, especially in the lineup side?
So if they got more lineup quality, if they went and got another 5-type starter, I think this would actually be an A, because we have to remember, and like, I think we're a bit phased by what happened after the All-Star break, where this team just kind of fell off the face of the earth and Giancarlo couldn't hit. And, like everything was going sour for them, and the pitching wasn't as good as it was. You lose Tyone, you replace Tyone in this rotation with Carlos Rodon. And the shoulder surgery for Montas sucks. That frankly sucks. But I can't ding them for that, because that's just really, really unfortunate. The way I view it is, You've got a 99 win team that said run it back, but you added one of the best left-handers in the game, maybe the best left-handed arm in the game. So you've got this rotation that stacks up as Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon. That's an elite 2. It's probably the second best pairing atop a rotation in baseball, only behind Verlander and Scherzer. And even then, Cole and Rodon's going to age a lot better than the 240-year-olds, right? And Verlander and Scherzer. I feel really good about that front two with Nestor and Sevy on the back end.
That could be the best. That could be the best rotation in baseball.
It could be the best rotation in baseball. And Aaron Judge was the best player in baseball last year. He could do it again. Anthony Rizzo could have a 30-homer season at that short porch. Giancarlo could be back. You get a full year of Harrison Bader. You get a full year of promising rookie shortstops, whether it be Peraza or in June or July, you replace Peraza with Volpe. I think this team is really good because of the Rodon thing. Like, again, if they just held serve and brought Rizzo and Judge back, it was a C. Yep. Because of the Rodon thing, I push him to a B flat B. So
my challenge is this. We picked apart the Red Sox here. Like, we got to do it with the Yankees right here in terms of that outfield. And not really the whole outfield. It's really the left side of the field, I should say. Third base, left field. Nobody is taking Josh Donaldson's contract on. No one's doing it. And at this point, you might as well see what he can do, I guess, next year. But for me, Josh Donaldson's a bench bat. And if he doesn't like that, a bench/platoon bat, you probably get him 300-400 plate appearances when it's all said and done. That's how I'd be going into this year. Aaron Hicks, like the fact that you have Aaron Hicks and Josh Donaldson on the roster is a travesty, but the fact that they are both slated to start is also a bit of a travesty. And I think DJ LeMahieu will probably end up getting some more reps at third. I don't know what the whole plan is for them there. I don't really know how they plan to balance out ABs here. I think there could have been ways to improve that, specifically left field. And we know that they surveyed the market. They were in on Ryan Reynolds. They were in on some other guys. I just don't know how you don't upgrade left field and third base. Those were two areas that were really rough last year, and they don't really have any internal options at left. They have some internal options at third. Peraza could play third. He'd be an elite defender there, and then you could bring up Volpe. They've got some other potential options, but I don't really like anybody that can help them in the immediate future in the outfield. I don't think we're going to be waiting on, some of the guys that they've been waiting on forever in AAA that just haven't been able to pan out, like Florial. So I'm okay with the pitching depth. I think they've got enough guys that can plug in, even if Montes isn't healthy. I think they've got enough dudes. I think Clark Schmidt's a fine 5. I think they've got plenty of other dudes that could plug in as well. But the left field third base situation makes me very uneasy when you really consider what they could have added. But that said, like Oswaldo Cabrera could go out there and left and be fine. You could probably figure something out one way or another. And DJ LeMahieu's versatility definitely helps. And Isaiah Kiner-Falefa can't hit, but at least he'll be a great defender and put bat on ball. If that's your 9-hitter playing third, if Donaldson's a disaster, it's not the worst thing, but it's not great.
So here's the thing. I think that I would be looking at this lineup with so much more optimism if on FanGraphs, like on Roster Resource, on the depth chart on MLB.com or wherever you go and get your depth chart, if LeMahieu was slated at third and not Donaldson was on the bench, and if Cabrera was slated in left and not Aaron Hicks, honestly, like that changes my perception of this lineup entirely. Because LeMahieu is objectively better than Donaldson at this point, and I've got a real soft spot for Cabrera just because I think this guy will fulfill a role exceptionally well at the major league level.
I think he's the best option in left and have Hicks be that bench, fourth outfielder type. But yeah, if they relegate Donaldson to the bench and start LeMahieu, then at third, like that works for me. Like that makes things look a lot better.
This grade comes down to Aaron Boone, dude. Like, I mean, opening day is opening day. You probably run out the 37-year-old and the 33-year-old in left, right? But I want to know game 6 of the season. You want to put your A lineup out there. What does it look like? And if Aaron Boone thinks that Donaldson and Hicks belong in that lineup, then I'm going to disagree with Aaron Boone somehow.
You're just telling me they couldn't go get Max Kepler. Max Kepler in left field is so much better.
I've seen guys with harder contracts to deal with get DFA'd than Aaron Hicks.
Yeah, 100%. So like
he needs to be
that
DFA.
almost has me like the lineup situation almost pushes me to a B-. But when you retain Judge and Rizzo and add Carlos Rodon, it's hard to give a B-. I'll probably go with a B as well. So we're still on the same track.
Dude, this is crazy. All right. Tampa. I think this is actually where we may differ because my grade is relative to the Tampa Bay Rays. It can't be relative to the rest of baseball.
No, it has to be relative to the rest of baseball.
Shit. All right. You. Damn. Okay. I got to
think about it. Okay, wait, let's flesh this out. And I had this exact thought too, bro. But like, here's the thing. We have to grade it fairly. And I feel like not every decision they make is genius, right? And this team hasn't won a World until they win multiple World Series in a row. I think we give them too much credit. I love what they do. I was just texting you about like all of the little minor moves that I love. And we just talked about them on, in terms of when we broke down the farm system on the call up, like there's brilliant things that they do that give them sustainably just deep talent from top to bottom of the organization. That said, they have not been able to put it all together at the highest level. And that's especially in like some of the free agent moves, the trades, whatever it may be at the top. They're great at the between the margins moves, and they're great at just perpetually being good. But until they win a World Series and until they're like, really like always there, Astros level dynasty, I'm not going to just give them credit like, oh, it's the Rays, they're operating their own way. Like, I'm going to give them credit for that in some regard, but I'm going to draw the line right here where I'm going to tell them, I'm going to say they had a bad offseason if I don't think they had a good offseason. And I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on this team.
So they signed Zach Eflin to a 3-year, $40 million deal, which is absurd by Tampa Bay Rays standards. They must see something in Eflin that I frankly don't see. I do see that Eflin is like a fine pitcher, but I don't think he's a 3-year, $40 million pitcher when you've got Jeffrey Springs as a 4-year, $31 million pitcher. I think Springs is much better than Zach Eflin at this point. I would be paying Springs more in total money and in annual money. He got less in both regards to Zach Eflin. The two guys that they add are Zach Eflin and Kevin Kelly, who is a Rule 5 pick from Colorado. Tampa went and traded for him. He is funky arm slot, right-handed reliever, just another guy that's going to be good for the Tampa Bay Rays. Yeah. And then they locked up 3 guys that were on their team in 2022. Jeffrey Springs, 4 years, $31 million extension. Yandy Diaz, 3 years, $24 million extension. Pete Fairbanks, 3 years, $12 million extension. This team is also without G-Man Choi. They traded him to Pittsburgh. So, I mean, this team, like, they did next to nothing. You could say that Eflin is the only real addition until Kevin Kelly is an all-star this year, and he's Kittredge 2.0, right? Relative to Tampa off seasons, I had an A- here because they never do shit. But if you're making me compare this to the rest of the league, it's a C-.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like anything that they did. Like Eflin is fine.
I'll say C because they pretty much remained the exact same.
Yeah, the Kevin Kelly pickup, like it's technically a Rule 5 pickup. Yeah, they traded for him after the Rule 5. Like, it's the same thing. I think they have to follow the same Rule 5 rules anyway, so it's basically a Rule 5 pickup. I liked the Jeffrey Springs extension. I thought that was bold, but I think the right move for them. Yeah. But you look at the lineup, bro. Like they're going to be starting what? Isaac Paredes at third. The outfield is going to be some version of Randy Arozarena, Manny Margot, and Jose Siri. I really like Josh Lowe, but I don't know how they feel about him and how much they're going to play him. They've got a lot of good internal options, and I think that's why they didn't really do anything, and that's the tough part. Like Curtis Meade could be up very soon. I still think Jonathan Aranda is going to mash. I think people are, we're too quick to write him off. I don't love Vidal Brujan, but that's a fine bench piece. The rotation doesn't really need much. So that's my challenge here is what should they have done? We talked about what the Yankees should have done. We talked about what the Red Sox and the Orioles should have done. What could the Rays have done to make this a better offseason? Because they already made the move for Siri. Clearly, they believe in him being a productive player for them. Margot was really good until he got banged up. So in a corner, that's a really good hitter for them there. Harold Ramirez was good for them. A lot of these guys had good years last year, or it's somebody that's coming back off injury. like a Brandon Lau, that you're not going to block him. You want to see if he can get back to 39 home run Brandon Lau. So it's tough because I want to criticize them for not making any moves, really anything crazy, but like, what moves did we want them to make? They don't need to go get relievers. Their rotation was sound. They went and got the one arm that is a depth arm for them at this point. He's going to be like their 4 or 5. And then their lineup's kind of accounted for, right? When we go through it, tell me where you would have upgraded, Jack. First base, Yandy Diaz. No, you just extended him. Wander Franco at short. No. Randy Arozarena in left. No. Brandon Lau at second.
No.
Would you have not? You wouldn't have upgraded there, right?
No.
Harold Ramirez.
Yes, I upgrade there. I wanted Josh Bell on this team. If Josh Bell was in this lineup instead of Harold Ramirez, I think this is a masterclass for Merrick Neander.
Yeah. So here's the thing: Curtis Mead knocking on the door, but I guess you're not making moves to not block prospects, right? Like that's definitely. I think
also, like there's space for Mead. If you want to put Mead at third, Isaac Paredes.
Yeah, he's better than Paredes, I think. Yeah. So that I agree. I think the masher was kind of what was missing, especially when I think Harold's going to regress. That guy hits the ball on the ground more than anybody.
Yeah.
And I think Paredes could easily regress. This guy pulls the ball more than anybody.
100%.
Ran into a ton of home runs, but like he's very platoon dependent, and I don't think brings much else to the table. Sneaky, only 24, but still. And then I think they could probably have had it. I don't know how much I love Christian Betancourt, but Mejia's good. I think that platoon's fine. Yeah, I think getting that one more bat, especially at the DH first base type spot, would have really helped a lot. But I agree, they didn't have that many areas of really needing to address. So I'm trying to decide if I want to give them a C or a C plus, because for me, it's almost status quo.
Yeah, you don't think they needed to upgrade in center?
They went and got Siri. They have Margot, who is also a phenomenal defensive center fielder. And then they have Josh Lowe, who, I still really like. So, like, that's not really how they operate.
You know how I feel about Siri, and a lot of it's in jest, but some of it I genuinely believe like that guy has tools out the ass. If it's going to click for anybody, it's going to click in Tampa. Margot, they already extended. Like they weren't going to move Margot. I wish they had a better option in right than Manny Margot. But I'm so much happier with Siri in center for a whole year as opposed to Kiermaier.
And I love a platoon idea of Siri and Josh Lowe. I think that could be a really fun platoon. They would steal probably a combined 50 bases. They could hit a combined 40 home runs. That's very possible. And Margot, again, he's just a great defender in the corner. That's another area. For right field, first base, DH is one of the spots that we probably could have seen an upgrade. Maybe Aranda can get by in the corner outfield if they want to try it. I'm between C and C plus, because did this team get better than last year? We can't give them credit for getting Glasnow back or anything like that.
The thing is, they get better by getting healthier. Like they get presumably a full year of Wander Franco. They get presumably a full year of Brandon Lau. They get presumably a full year of Tyler Glasnow. So you're running out a front 4 of McClanahan, Glasnow, Rasmussen, Springs. Boz is still on the mend. Taj Bradley could be up very soon. Oh, by the way, they paid $40 million to Eflin. I think this team's going to be really good. But obviously you look at the lineup and they don't have the name recognition. They don't have guys that have done it so many times. So naturally we have doubt there. And like, I can't, it's really hard for me to separate how I view this offseason when I'm just viewing it as like, oh, classic Rays. Like they did great because they're going to be great again.
They were also I think the most injured team in baseball last year. Like every single important player was hurt at a certain point, and they had so many guys going down. And I think they have the right to try to see who can contribute early on. Because the thing with the Rays is they could go make a move early in season. They could go make a move in May, June, and then in July around the deadline. Like there's a lot of other moves that they could potentially make as they sort out where they're at, right? If we see Paredes hit a wall and Mead is maybe not ready, could they go make a trade? If Brandon Lau just doesn't seem to be able to get back and get healthy, like could we see them go make another move? Like that's the thing is they could be wanting to wait and see, because there's a lot of guys that I think they just deserve the benefit of the doubt to get some more ABs and see how they can do. Like Harold Ramirez earned himself the opportunity to start this year, but if he fully regresses, then could they go out and trade for a masher? So I think that's part of this here too. So with the extensions factored in and how banged up they were and how many answers they still need to try to find around some of these players, I'm going to give them a C+, I think.
Okay. All right. When Jeimer Candelario is on this Rays team in July, let's come chat. Yeah. All right. So you give him C+?
Yeah.
I gave him C. All right. There, we're different. I'm very excited about that. Last one, the Toronto Blue Jays. They were active, and I think we might be coming in at pretty high numbers for Toronto. The big one, obviously, was the biggest trade that happened this offseason. They acquired Dalton Varsho for Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. They moved Teoscar Hernandez to Seattle. In return, they get Eric Swanson, who immediately becomes the setup guy to Romano, and Adam Macko, who's a minor league. He's a left-handed prospect. They signed Chris Bassett to 3 years, $63. They signed Brandon Belt to a 1 year, $9.5 million deal. They signed Kevin Kiermaier to a 1 year, $9 million deal. They signed Chad Green, who's still recovering from Tommy John surgery, to a 2 year, $8.5 million deal with club options for $9 million in 24, 25, and 26. It's a crazy contract structure. If you're fascinated by that stuff at all, I would go, recommend reading up about that Chad Green Toronto contract. It's like, it's too, I don't know, like we get into the weeds a lot on this show, but we don't need to get into the weeds on the Chad Green contract style.
Yeah, no.
They also acquire Zach Thompson in a trade. They signed Winton Bernard to a minor league deal in terms of just outfield depth, and Bernard, a feel-good story here. Varsho is massive. And the conversation that we were having about the Blue Jays offense is they needed to get more left-handed. They got a lot more left-handed here with Varsho, with Bell. And then the other thing that jumps out to me is they went and signed a $60 million pitcher to try and hedge the possibility of Jose Barrios sucking again. I wish they went and got an arm I feel more comfortable with than Chris Bassett. I'm telling you, Bassett feels like one of these Wallenda brothers, like part of this Wallenda family. Like every single outing is a tightrope act from him because the stuff lives in the zone. Nothing really jumps out as like, damn, that's nasty. So right now it's Manoah, Gausman, Barrios, Bassett, Yusei Kikuchi. Ricky Tiedemann is meteoric. He's like painter levels rising quickly. So Tiedemann could be up by the end of the year. We'll see. I think they got better, man. Like I gave him a B+.
So the thing with Bassett is I don't trust him in terms of being that big game, hand him the ball, game 5 of the series, whatever it is. But we're talking about a rotation that needed to get through 162. This is a team that's, trying to win the division. They're always, kind of just skate into the playoffs and they find themselves in a tough spot. And it's hard because you got to match up against the aces. I think Bassett can really help them flirt with first place potentially. And the thing with Bassett is it's almost been an interesting curve of like underrated. And then he goes to the Mets and then it was almost like, I feel like people started to overrate him a little bit. And now I think people are like underrating him by talking about how overrated he is, because not to put your mind in a pretzel, but this guy's a 3.45 ERA in his career. Yeah. And he hasn't been any worse over the last couple of years. You look at 2020, 2.29. He was just absolutely dominant for Oakland. 2021, 3.15 ERA. Then he goes to the big lights in the big city in New York in 181 innings, which was a career high last year, a 3.42 ERA. That's really solid. And that's in a tough division. So for me, I feel like Bassett is almost had this interesting curve of getting back to underrated again. And this is somebody that I think could be a really, really solid 3 for them. I like the Zach Thompson depth pickup with how much they've struggled to stay healthy. This is a guy that looked really good with the Marlins, took a step back with the Pirates, but even as a struggling arm last year, like a 5.18 ERA, again, that's a guy that you can plug in an emergency and you're not fucked. And that's there. You need more guys like that. You need more. You call them sacrificial lambs. Like, I think that's the guy that you're like, oh, we're fucked. He's just above sacrificial lamb. You need guys that are above sacrificial lamb. They got one of those. When it comes to the left-handed bats, I love what they did, man. Yeah. And in a vacuum, we can talk about how trading Gabriel Moreno and Gurriel for Varsho we talked about it, kind of a little bit more. You're putting out a little bit more than you're getting in, right?
Yeah.
But you're not subtracting anything from the big league roster besides Gurriel, but you're swapping Gurriel for Varsho. So that's a major upgrade, So at that point, I'm looking at this team as they just simply got better by a pretty good margin.
Dude, it's what you needed. I compared, what was it? I think it was on the Friday episode, the mailbag, where I compared that trade, Varsho for Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel, to Halliburton for Sabonis with some other pieces, right? Halliburton healed and I think like Tristan Thompson or some shit for Sabonis at a pick. Domantas Sabonis was needed in Sacramento. Halliburton was not needed in Sacramento because they already had De'Aaron Fox. And Healed was just surplus shooting. So think about it. One of the bright young stars in the game, Halliburton, is excess because you already have a top point guard at the position. Gabby Moreno was excess. While he is a bright young catching prospect in baseball and one of the best prospects in all of Major League Baseball right now, you already had a top 5 guy at the position in Alejandro Kirk and a damn good backup in Danny Jansen. Not on expiring contracts either. So Halliburton equals Moreno. Lourdes Gurriel, excess. Good player, excess. Didn't need him. You had a bunch of the same guy. Buddy Hield. Sacramento already had shooters. Lourdes Gurriel is Buddy Hield. Sabonis, while he is good, he fits what Sacramento needed. They needed to pair a pick and roll guy with De'Aaron Fox. Dalton Varsho, really, really good. But what he does for the Toronto Blue Jays takes them over the top because, again, they needed to get left-handed. They needed some power versatility. Varsho fills every single role that Toronto didn't have. Varsho is Sabonis, Moreno is Halliburton, and Lourdes Gurriel is Buddy Hield for your basketball people.
Yeah. So here's my question, though, because I think you hit the nail on the head. That was money. That was great. How much better did they get when we do the transactional thing here? What came in, what went out, right? So you broke down that trade. I think that's clear that that's a net positive. But they do subtract Teoscar Hernandez and his 800 OPS, which is pretty good. And I think he's almost a little overrated at this point because he doesn't play great defense and he doesn't get on base at all. 316 OBP. He's still a great hitter, 25 homers. He's a really exciting player with big pop. But you subtract Teoscar, you subtract Gurriel, who had a 743 OPS. You bring in Varsho, who's going to put up a way better WAR than either of those guys. I think he's going to have a higher WAR than both of them combined. But you bring in Varsho, who's going to be an elite defender, probably put up similar offensive numbers to Teoscar. I think he's going to hit around 25 home runs. I think he's going to hit around 270. I think he's going to slug around 480, 490. I think he can slug that high. He's going to give you way more stolen bases and way more elite defense. So it's not going to be close in that regard. But Gurriel to Kiermaier, and I know it's kind of weird because in this process, we're moving George Springer to a corner, which I do think has to have some value in itself.
Yes.
So we're talking about a guy that has struggled to stay healthy, and I think will benefit offensively from moving out there. But Kiermaier is not going to hit nearly as well as Gurriel. The difference is this outfield defensively is netting way more outs above average. I don't even know what it is, but it's going to be exponentially better in terms of defense. Offensively, it might be a wash. It might be a wash offensively because Kiermaier, you're hoping for a 700 OPS. You're probably getting a 680, but he's going to play still, I think, elite defense out there. But let's say Kiermaier really can't carry his weight, dude. Who are you putting out there? Like, let's say he hits a wall. He can't hit. What are you doing? They don't really have any other options.
No.
Who do they plug out there?
They don't have another option. It might be Kevin Biggio. It might
Whit Merrifield?
It might be Merrifield.
It would be Whit Merrifield. That's not the worst.
It would be Merrifield, and you put Santiago Espinal in his place at second, and I really like Espinal. So I think this team,
I was going to say, I almost wish Danny Jansen could play outfield out there because I like his bat.
But I do like that contingency plan because we know Witt can play center, right? Like he can play center field. Whether it's Springer going back to center and Witt playing right or left with Varsho in the other corner, or it's Witt hopping in center and Springer's just the full-time right fielder and Varsho the full-time left fielder. I like that. I think that Whit Merrifield's going to get a lot of plate appearances. I think that he's going to get a lot of innings in the outfield. And I think that Santiago Espinal is going to get a lot of plate appearances. I bet he's a 500 plate appearance guy because I think that they signed Kiermaier knowing Whatever they get from him offensively is great. He's the 9-hitter. He is far and away the least valuable bat in one of the best lineups in baseball, if not the best lineup in baseball. That's the other thing. This is already one of the better lineups in baseball. 1 through 8. I mean, it's hard to find more impact here. So I don't necessarily think you needed to upgrade offensively. I think that they saw a chance to pounce on defensive acumen, and they did it. But I feel great about Espinal, Kiermaier, and Merrifield just constantly being in like this carousel.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How the fuck did Raimel Tapia have 433 plate appearances last year?
Yeah, no, I mean, dude, Bradley Zimmer was getting plate appearances.
Where did that happen, though? Because you have 493 from Lourdes Gurriel. I guess he didn't play as much left field as I'm remembering. I guess they had to move and shake a lot because
Gurriel was DHing.
Yeah, so we're talking about the outfield A to B change here. It's a little different because you got to account for Kiermaier replacing 433 plate appearances of Raimel Tapia, which I think will put up the same offense, if not better, and way better defense. So that helps the case a lot. I was looking at how many plate appearances went to Tapia there, and I think it was mostly Gurriel DHing. So in that case too, I love the Swanson addition in the bullpen. That makes their bullpen a lot better. Yimi Garcia, Anthony Bass, those guys are solid enough. Those aren't guys I want in the 8th inning. Those are guys I love in the 7th inning. So now you got Swanson in the 8th. Romano is a closer. That's great.
Honestly,
Ross Stripling is a big loss.
Honestly, same with Meza and Simber too. I feel good about that. Stripling is a big loss. Stripling was a 3 ERA guy, and he helped them out when Barrios stunk it up. I was just looking at the available starting pitcher free agents, and there were just so many other guys that I would have liked to see in a Blue Jays uniform instead of Chris Bassett. As of right now, Kikuchi is the only left-hander in that starting rotation. I would have preferred Tyler Anderson over Chris Bassett.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Even Nathan Eovaldi on a 2-year deal. I think I would have preferred Eovaldi over
just the upside
Bassett.
of it.
Just the upside of Nathan Eovaldi. I probably the same, but I might have sided with Jose Quintana over Bassett.
That one I like more because I do find myself a little bit risk averse when it comes to adding to this rotation because you have Manoah who looks phenomenal, but let's see how he follows it up if he can match it. I think he will be really good next year. Kevin Gausman should be more than fine. No questions about those two at the end of the day. But Barrios, big question. Kikuchi, massive question, right? So and then Ryu's hurt. So you kind of needed to pencil in a third guy in there that you trust. And Bassett, again, we can go back to how I trust him. I don't know if I trust Eovaldi. I almost wish they added one of the guys you mentioned on top, right? I would have preferred to see Tyler Anderson added on top of this. So I'm not counting on Yusei Kikuchi.
I just don't want to block Nate Pearson. Is that fair?
That's the thing too. You don't have to really worry about anybody coming up other than Tiedemann. And Tiedemann's still far from being built up to a big league starter in terms of workload. Look at his game logs. They barely have stretched him out. So that's something there that I hear you. But at the same time, I kind of like the calmness that Chris Bassett brings, given the rest of that rotation.
Yeah, I hear you. So Manoah, Gausman, Barrios, Bassett, Kikuchi. Mitch White is probably the 6, but I need you to tell me a bit more about Yasver Zulueta, who is probably the 7 right now. He's probably the first guy up.
Yeah, Yasver Zulueta is pretty gross. And that's something that I believe one of our new writers that are jumping on really soon are gonna do a dive on Yasver because he's a really interesting case. Crazy velo. I was just pulling up. I wanted to see what the fastball velo was. I didn't remember it off the top. Averaged 97 miles an hour this past season. Command's pretty off though. He's definitely a little bit far off in that department. So I'm interested to see if they try to use him in the bullpen role or like a swingman. But that's another arm that can come in and make an impact. And I also think Nate Pearson is going to be able to throw and make an impact this year as well. I don't know how they're going to use him. I'm interested to see how that works, but they have more pitching options this year, I think, than they've really ever had in recent seasons. So that does say a lot for them. And again, I think outfield and lineup overall upgraded. Brandon Belt also, I love the upside of that addition. I'm really excited about Brandon Belt. I think he could be great. I like the backup plan of Spencer Horwitz because I still think that guy can really hit. He's going to get an opportunity as an underrated prospect, but I love the Belt addition. So lineup improved. Rotation, I'd say, is the same. is roughly the same because Ross Stripling gave you a 3 flat last year in 130 something innings. So you figure Bassett gives you a 3-4 and 170 innings, relatively the same. I'd say the rotation's kind of a wash.
Yeah.
Bullpen better with Swanson. So I think with the control that they acquired, with what they were able to do with this Varsho deal, because they had no outfielders that I was looking at anytime soon. That makes a big difference for them. I'm like teetering on giving them almost just a flat out A.
Yeah,
because I like how much control they acquired. I'm gonna go A minus.
A minus. Okay. So you gave Toronto an A minus. I gave him a B plus. You gave Tampa a C plus. I gave him a C. You gave New York a B. I gave New York a B. You gave the Red Sox a C minus. I gave the Red Sox a C minus. And then we both gave the Baltimore Orioles Ds. So,
yep.
All right.
Close. I thought we'd be further off on some of these.
I thought so too. Let me pull up the odds real quick to win the division, because I do want to like do this, right? Because I think this will tell you a lot about which teams are creating optimism with their offseason as we go into this. According to DraftKings, as I open up Major League Baseball division winner, here we go. The AL East, the Yankees are plus 105. The Blue Jays are plus 220. Tampa is plus 380. The Red Sox are plus 1900. The Orioles are plus 2200. What jumps out?
Sounds about that's almost chronological with our lines up with our grades.
Yeah.
For the most part. And I think that's pretty fair. I think what stands out to me, honestly, is how far ahead the Yankees are.
Yeah.
I get it because they won 99 and they technically added to the team and they have some prospects that could come up and make an impact. I think Peraza is going to be awesome, but I'm pretty excited to sprinkle a little bit on the Blue Jays to win this division, because I don't think they're done either. I'm not saying in this offseason, but I think they're going to be aggressive at the deadline, especially if they can smell that division. If they can sniff that thing, they're going to make a move. So I'm not expecting this team to slow down anytime soon with the aggression. And I think a lot of their guys are naturally going to make a leap, and we'll get into that later. But I think it's interesting. I think the only thing that stands out to me is maybe the Blue Jays. Even then, though, the Blue Jays are giving them credit with those odds to put him second there. Plus, that's pretty good.
Can I just say, because of the starting rotation, Tampa at plus 380 is very appealing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially with the guys that they could have come up and make an impact.
Yep. All right. Grading the off seasons will continue. Peter and I will do the AL Central tomorrow. Every link you need is in the show notes. Go listen to the call up. Go listen to Show and Go with Taylor Davis and the Just Fantasy show. Just Fantasy is ramping up here. So talk to you guys tomorrow.